So, where we're going, since today we're going from the mundane to the subtle, we'll start with a very brief meditation and a chant so that we can get the divine blessings to help us grasp this topic. Okay, so what I'd like you guys to do is find a comfortable spot, sit with your back straight. If you're in Sukhasana or any other asana. We'll just do like a 2 or 3 minute meditation so that we're grounded and centered. So we'll begin with your eyes closed. Keep your back straight. Feel the center of your spine connected to the earth below and extend it all the way down to the center of the earth. Whatever thoughts you have, feelings, emotions, challenges, just pass it down that channel down your back, through your spine, all the way down to the center of earth. Just give it to Mother Earth, at least for the next hour and a half. Bring your attention to your heart and feel the connection from your heart through your crown chakra, and raise that connection like 500 feet above you, and feel the connection rod to the universal spirits way high up. Now, feel the energy come through your crown chakra antenna, grow, pass through your body, and all the way down to the center of earth. We'll take a few moments to have this energy pass through you and also come through you, going back. As you do this, be mindful of your breath and breathe in slowly, relaxingly, and exhale relaxingly. Just feel the relaxation, the calmness, the release to the skies, the release to the earth. Have a sense of neutrality. Now, we're going to do a series of slow inhalation and rapid exhalation. So you breathe in slowly and then you exhale with effort and force. So keep your eyes closed. Inhale and exhale. Great. Let's do this about 5-6 times. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. 3 more. Inhale, exhale. Again. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Great. All right, I'll chant and we'll begin. After the end of the chant, you may open your eyes as soon as I finish saying Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavid Vishavahe. Om Shanta Shanta Shanti. Just relaxingly, you may open your eyes when at your comfort level, and when I have everyone's attention, we'll begin. Great. Welcome back to what is sublime. And so I wanted to disconnect from the mundane, and yesterday's conversation was mundane in a way. Today we're going to go a little deeper to get what this whole thing is about. The so-called thing that we refer to as Vedanta. Vedanta, the meaning of Vedanta is that it's composed of 2 words. One, the first part is Veda, and Veda means the body of knowledge. What kind of knowledge? It's a body of knowledge that was not created by a human mind. There is no way the human mind could conceive all the things that Veda talks about. And so the Veda is actually divided into 2 parts. The first part is really about fulfilling human desires. And the second part is what we call Vedanta. Anta simply means the end of the Vedas. Now, if you remember yesterday when I talked about the oral structure versus the literal structure, in the literal structure we have the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. In the oral structure, what we have is you have building blocks. And you really find the conclusion of the building blocks at the end. It's like a house. You don't see the house. You start with the foundation, you build the walls, you build the building, and you top it up with a roof, and you go, aha, this is what you had in mind. Now I can see a house, right? So Vedanta is really the end of the Vedas, and because it is the end of the Vedas, it, by its very position, establishes the purpose of the entire existence and the purpose of our lives. So while the earlier part of the Veda tells us what we need to do, what we want to get, because it really deals about our emotions and our feelings and what we desire, the end portion of the Vedas tells us the reality of the world and the reality of who you are. Long story short, Vedanta really is a teaching about oneness, because Vedanta establishes that we are all one, without a doubt. The question is, how can that be so, and how do we go about proving it? Now let me ask you this. How many of you think we are all one? Raise your hands. Yeah. See, a lot of us. Okay, my next question to you is, prove it to me that we're all one. And how would you go about doing that? It's really hard because we live in duality. We may feel we're one, but we don't know how. And the other challenge we have is that in a conflict, when I'm going through a difficult time, when I'm having a problem, which is emotional or mental or even including physical, I do not see oneness at that point. How do I get my mind wrapped around the fact that we're one? And on top of it, how do you go about proving it? It has to be proven. I have to see it. I cannot believe it. And because of that, Vedanta goes through this process of discussing and holding your hand to show you how you can see the oneness in everything. This was compiled anywhere from 15 to 20,000 years ago, and it survives till today because it works. There are a lot of things that came in life and went. Yet today I'm sitting here as a product of this teaching to be able to share it with you. Now, if you were a scientist, how would you go about proving something is valid? If I want to prove all water molecules in the world is made up of H2O, would I go about collecting all the water molecules in the world? Would I examine every lake, water, streams, ponds, seas, glaciers? That would be insane. It's not possible. A smarter way of going about doing this is that you take a sample. Examine a water molecule within a test tube. Get a sample from a lake, get a sample from a pond, get a sample from a stream or a river or a glacier, and you examine the molecules there. You take a sample, not the entire thing. By the very fact that you can prove a thing in one sample, you can then by extension say all water molecules, whether it's a glacier, whether it's an ice cube, solid form, whether it's in a liquid form, in terms of a water, in terms of a pond, river, lake, stream, water coming out of your tap, urine, soft drinks, beer, tea, coffee, any liquid form will have the H2O molecule plus the extras. But we know for sure, without a doubt, that every water molecule on Earth, and Moon and Mars nowadays maybe, is made up of H2O. That's why we call it water, right? So, in this ingenious way, whether if we use that as a scientific methodology, if everything is one, what do you think would be the best sample to examine? Because we can't examine every water molecule in the world. Suggestions? Yourself. Who better to examine than yourself? Besides, what are we all searching for? When you say you're a spiritual seeker, what exactly are you seeking? Yeah. So, the Upanishads, which falls within the category of the end of the Vedas, Vedanta, everything contained within the end of the Vedas is the Upanishads. All the Upanishads teach you, the seeker, not the teacher, teaches you, the seeker, to discover who you are. If you can find out who you are, then you can see the oneness in everything. If you can see who you truly are, then you can see what everything is. If you can see who you truly are, you can see you in your worst enemy. I know there are some people talking about Trump and all that, you know. You can see you in Trump, really. You can see you in Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden. You can see yourself in the person you hate the most, which is the hardest thing to do. But if you know and if you can see through this, you will see it in everything. What happens when you see this? And please note, I'm using the word see. If you can see this in yourself, and by the way, you do not have to alter your state of being. You do not have to do a headstand. You do not have to meditate in the caves of the Himalayas. You do not have to change anything that you're doing to change your physical, mental state to be able to see this. You can see it at all times, even when you're angry, even when you're in love, even when you're depressed. You can see it because you know it. You don't need an experience, because your very experience is the very fact that establishes your one. The fact that you know you exist is the fundamental crux of establishing everything is one. The problem is, which part of you? And yesterday Swamiji went through this process of saying, going through the koshas and saying it's not your body, it's not your mind, it's not your thoughts, and so on. So then which part of you is the truth? So the vision of Vedanta is that we are one. It says that. And there are four major statements that what we call in the Vedas as Mahavakyas. These are what we call major statements. These are conclusions. You can say it's a hypothesis. And these four hypotheses come from different Vedas. As you know, there are four Vedas. So one, it says, Aham Brahma Asmi, I am Brahman. I'm Brahma, actually. Aham Brahma Asmi. Second one, Tat Tvamasi, you are that. Prajnanam Brahma, all knowing is Brahma. And I forget one more. Tatvamasi, it will come. Anyway, the point is, all those statements in Sanskrit establish that you're one. Now here's the thing. I talked about how can we be one with your worst enemy. Let me push the envelope a little bit. Whenever we say we're one, We look at this oneness from our earthly plane. I'm one with you. Okay, maybe that's convincing. I'm one with the earth. Maybe that's okay. I can probably see that. I can feel that. But how about we say this, that you're one with God? Can you feel the oneness with God? Because when you say you're one, we keep saying that I'm one, but then God is out there somewhere, hanging out in the skies to judge us. When we say we're one, that includes God. That includes everything you see and don't see. So the vision of Vedanta is oneness, and that includes everything in existence. So the question then becomes, how does Vedanta go about trying to prove this? Because as I talked about it yesterday, it's not a belief system. It has to be proven. And because it is proven, we get to see that. When I use the term see, it's different because it's not an experience. The only difference, though, you see it with your cognitive mind, not with your eyes. Okay, what do I mean by that? Just like your eyeball, when it sees something, what does it do? It takes the image of the object that's outside you, inverts it in the eyeball, and then ships it to the brain. The brain goes down into its memory database and says, aha, that thing I'm looking at is a cauliflower. Why? Because it was in the memory database. This is how computers work. Sometimes we look at a person and my memory database is not so good. Then I look at this person and think this person is someone else. The reason why we don't know immediately is because of the memory database. Computers function the same way. But what does the eyeball do? It doesn't give you the information. All it does, it ships information, it ships light. It shifts light from the outside, a reflection, inverts it so that your mind can take that image and give meaning to it, which your brain does, not your eyeball. It's fundamental to understand this process. Likewise, we can do the same analysis with the rest of the 4 sense organs. Same thing with smell, sense of touch, taste, and sound. The ears do exactly the same thing. The sense organs are merely peripherals for data input. I've got a computer background, so But if you remember, in the olden days, you had a computer, there was a laptop. We didn't have laptops at that point. You had a desktop, you had a keyboard, you had a little separate mic, a little separate camera, a separate printer, and all these were peripherals for input, and your printer was your output. Your screen is an output. Similarly, our 5 sense organs are input they input information into our mind. In Sanskrit, we have a brilliant word to describe the functionality of the sense organs. The Sanskrit word for this is called pramana. Pramana in Sanskrit means means of knowledge. So, if you're looking at something through your eyeball, the eyeball becomes the means of knowledge for sight. That means in order for you to see something, there has to be 2 or 3 conditions. One, there has to be a light. That light reflects on the object through your eyeball, and your eyeball then transmits the light, the reflected light, and you then interpret it. You give meaning to the reflection. The same thing happens with sound. When we speak in English, because you have learned English, English is meaningful to you. English words, when you hear them, they have meaning. But if you hear Swahili, they might not make sense to you. May be gibberish. Or, if you hear the language of the bush people, you'll not understand what they're saying, but they do. Again, your mind is trained to hear those sounds, and it gives meaning to those sounds. And I can go on and on with all the 5 senses, but you get the point. For us to see something, we need a means of knowledge. The correct means of knowledge. To hear something, we need the correct means of knowledge, that is our ear, to hear something. For taste, we need skin. Our tongue. For touch, skin. All of these are means of knowledge. But wait a minute. How is it that the dogs and the cats can hear and see more than we do? You begin to realize that your sense organs are limited. Incredibly limited. Because your pets can hear much better than we can. Our eyesights are really bad. That's why we're all wearing glasses or contact lenses or whatever it is that we wear. And even in spite of having correctional lenses, what we see may not be what we see. Because why? We see reflected light that is not absorbed by the object. That's kind of interesting. If we see an object that is blue, it's only because the object has absorbed all the other colors and reflected what it didn't want, which was blue. Inverted, not only the image is inverted, but the color is inverted. So how can we say that this thing is blue when it's kicked out what it doesn't want? We say the sky is blue, but it isn't. You know that. We see the sun traverse the skies, see the sunrise, we see the sunset, we see the sun rise and set throughout the day. Yet, well, not only that we see it, not only that you see it, the person that you trust the most And if you ask the person that you trust the most, hey, do you see the sun rise and set? Yes. You see the entire cultures revolve around sunrise and sunset. How can you be wrong? To top it off, religious texts reaffirm the fact that the earth is stationary. The earth is stationary and the sun moves. There's 4 references in the Bible that clearly states that the earth is fixed and the sun traverses the sky. 4 verses, 4 statements in the Bible. So not only our experience teaches us, we see it, we feel it, we get burnt by the sun, we see the sun, and we have religious text that establishes that the sun traverses the skies. How can we be wrong? But then a wise guy called Galileo shows up. He does some experiments and says, excuse me guys, it's not quite what we see, because it is in fact the earth that rotates the sun and not the other way around. And for making a statement like that, which contradicts the Bible, gets you crucified. Well, they were kind, so they put him under house arrest. And this was only 500 years ago. On the other hand, the Vedas, 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, already knew that. How did they know that? Without telescopes, without the computers that we have today. If you go to any temple in India today, they follow something called the Panchangam, which is about the planetary movements. Indian astrology, which dates way back further than 6,000 years ago, we have evidence of 6,000, but I believe it was longer than that, that they knew thousands of years ago. It doesn't matter whether it was 2,000 or 6 or 10. It was a long time back. Galileo was only 500 years ago. They knew the speed of the planets, they knew the size of the planets, they knew the distances of the planets, and they knew the effect of those planets on us. And differently for every human being, and that's why Indian astrology works. Now here's the thing, how did they know this without all the gadgets we have today? Without all the advanced technical knowledge we have, computers, telescopes, and so on? How did they get that information? And what they got thousands of years ago is validated till today. In fact, the astronomical measurements that we have today, that NASA uses, that modern science uses, validates what these numbers that were revealed by the Vedas thousands of years ago. I can go on and on about yoga, which you all are doing. As you know, it's an ancient science. I can go on and on about Ayurveda, because Ayurveda talks about your basic constitution, the energies in your physical body that today modern science has absolutely no clue about. Yet an Ayurvedic teacher can sit here, or an Ayurvedic doctor can sit here and tell you exactly what's going on in your body without even touching you or talking to you. When I was training, I'll use this quick example. When I was training for Ayurveda in India, I was sitting with my teacher, and he had this glass doors where the patient was outside. He said, "You see that next patient there?" He told me his symptoms in order. He told me that what he's suffering from. He told me why he was suffering from those things even before the patient came in. And I, like a dutiful student, kind of had my noteboard, and I took notes and wrote it down in the order he gave it to me. And this person comes in. And the teacher then, my teacher, who's the doctor, said, "Okay, so What are your symptoms? In order, same order, this patient tells us. Then he says, some of it had to do with food. He says, do you eat? He was having some pitta problems, so do you eat spicy food? He says, yeah, I love spicy food. I'm like, uh-huh. Do you have sleepless nights? Yes. Do you have this? And it went on and on and on. And I'm blown. And then, so this is a place where the doctor is asking him to tell him what's going on, yet he told me beforehand what's exactly happening to this patient. And then he gives the prescription, and the patient goes away. So I'm looking at my teacher, and I say, why didn't you just tell him and waste like 10 minutes talking, getting him to tell you all this stuff? It would be more impressive, actually, if you just told him, you just walked in here, by the way, boom, boom, boom. These are your problems. This is why you have them. Here's the drugs to get out. Right? He didn't do that. And I asked him, why did you do that? He goes, part of healing is listening. And I learned one of my critical lessons of healing. But the point I'm making that example is Ayurveda, which is based on thousands of years of knowledge from the source, which we call the Veda, which is the body of knowledge, called the Vedas, teaches us how to look at a person and say exactly what's going on with that person without dissecting the person, without subjecting this patient to hundreds of tests, and of course billing you thousands of pounds or dollars for doing all these useless tests, which will give you the result in 2 seconds. How did they know all this? So the more and more you start dealing with the Vedic knowledge, what you begin to realize, there is profound knowledge that no human mind could actually conceive it or create it or make it up. That this body of knowledge was revealed. So, to the extent that this body of knowledge was revealed, all that we can see today, that we can prove today, is actually valid. And because all of that which is valid is true, then by extension, all the other things that we cannot prove, we can take it to be true by extension. Okay? So when the Vedas say you are one and goes on to prove it, you have to begin with trust. Does a child trust its parents when it's born? Does it say, Mom, Dad, you're horrible parents, I need to get new parents? No. You trust your parents. That's what you came up with. You chose them before you were born. Got to deal with it. You have a trust. You trust the scriptures to reveal to you that you're one. You trust the scriptures to prove it to you. So, until it does, you have an open mind. So it establishes that you are one with everything. That's what the statement is. It goes about then proving that you are one. And this is how it does. Vedanta is a means of knowledge, what we call Shabda Pramana. Shabda means words in Sanskrit. Pramana is means of knowledge. Remember I talked about the eyeball being the pramana for sight? The same way. The eyeball does not translate, does not interpret, does not manipulate the information. It just transmits light. Vedanta tells you about who you are. Because if you can figure out who you are, everything else is known. If you examine one molecule of water and you deduce that it is H2O, that means every other water molecule in the world in different shapes and forms is H2O. You rest in that knowledge. Likewise, Vedanta proves who you are. It is a means of knowledge. It is not a system of belief. It is not philosophy. It is not another theoretical system. It is not a school of thought. Because what happens is when you don't, my guru used to say this, when you don't understand what Vedanta is, then you put it into all of these categories like school of thought, it's a darshanam, it is a philosophy, it is it is a system of some of them even converted to system of belief. But you put it into all of these different boxes, or it is a religion or not a religion. I mean, you put it in all of these categories when you don't understand that it is a pramana. Pramana is a means of knowledge. For what? Vedanta, the way it proves to you that you are one, is that it teaches you you are one by pointing and transmitting information to your mind. Just the way the eyeball does. Just the way your ears do. Or your other sense organs. Sense organs merely take information, pass it on to your mind. Whatever it does pass on, that information, it's an instrument of passing information. That instrument is called pramana. And that is Vedanta. It has to be clearly understood as that. If you make it out to be a religion or a school of thought or a philosophy, then you're missing the boat completely, because you're telling me that your eyeball is a philosophy. Or you're telling me you are a philosophy. Because it is about you at the end of the day. You're telling me you're a school of thought or you're a religion. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. It's about seeing correctly. It is about seeing correctly. How? With your mind, not your eyeball. And because you need to have 20/20 vision in terms of your eyeball, you need to have a proper mind to be able to see this vision. It is a cognitive vision, unlike a visual, unlike a vision through your eyeball. You see the significance of that? That your mind becomes the instrument of processing words. Now, yesterday, when I talked about yoga and what it really means to be a yogi, I was giving you the view of the forest rather than a tree. Rather than looking at an individual tree, I was telling you, look at this system from a perspective of looking at the entire forest. That in order to know that you're one, you need a prepared mind. The prepared mind, to have a prepared mind, you need a prepared body. That means eating right, doing asanas, taking care of your body. To take care of your mind, Patanjali Yoga Sutras is one of them, which is what we talked about yesterday. When you synchronize your body with your mind, then you are able to get to see who you are through Vedanta. And in order to synchronize your body and mind and spirit, you need a yoke. Why you need a yoke is because these are three separate stubborn beasts. The time you use a yoke on a bull is to pull the cart, is so that you get these two stubborn bulls to function and work together, to pull the cart together. Your mind wants to do something, your body wants to do completely something else. Your body wants to do something else, but your mind is like way in a different place. You can't control it. You can't control your mind. In order to control your mind, you need your body. It's the container. And so asana becomes important. But when you start looking at these individual systems of asana or Patanjali Yoga Sutras or Karma Yoga, in that view and in that individual view, you're missing the boat. Because the point is to actually use all of this to be able to have a mindset that is able to cognize the view of oneness. The mind has to see it, not your eyeball. It is a cognitive vision and not an experience. And if you can see it through the mind, then you know it all the time. How so? We see the sun rise. We see the sun traverse the skies. We see the sun set. Today, we know that's an appearance. We know the blue skies is an appearance. How do we know that? We know that because science tells us otherwise. There is another means of knowledge that tells us differently. We have seen pictures from NASA that shows the beautiful Earth rotating around the sky, around the sun. So in spite of the fact that our experience tells us otherwise, in our mind, we can see the Earth rotating around the sun, which gives the appearance of a sunrise, sunset, and the traversing of the skies. Using the same analogy, Vedanta tries to establish the truth of yourself, the truth of who you are. Not only that, it says you're everything. You're God. You are the world. You are complete. Everything that you seek, you are. We say it in our scriptures, in our stories, in our tradition so many times. But it merely appears as vague statements because we don't know how to see it. But wouldn't it be great if you could see it? If you can see the truth of who you are? That you are the world, that you are God, and you are everything that there is, and that you are complete. You have everything you want, everything you need. Wouldn't that be amazing? And that is what this teaching is about. So, how does it go to prove that? We have to understand Vedanta is nothing but pramana. It is a means of you knowing who you are. That's it. It's fundamental to know that. It's fundamental to know what it's not. Because this is where the confusion happens. It is not an experience, it is not a philosophy, it is not a school of thought, because it is you. And like you saw what happened yesterday morning, when Swami Sarvapriyananda started taking us through that deductive processing, the processing is negation, negation, negation until you start from the gross, which is the physical body. You negate the physical body, then you, where I think it started with, it was Annamaya Kosha. Then we went to the Pranamaya Kosha, then to the Manomaya Kosha, and so on, till we get to the subtlest. And then we negate the subtlest. We keep negating it through logic. What did we do in that process? Did he use any tools and gadgets to say you're not your body? Analysis. Logical analysis to negate you're not your body. Logical deductive reasoning to establish that you're not your mind. And in Vedanta, we have 5 methodologies to do precisely that. He talked about Drik, Drishya, Viveka. Seen, seer, analysis. That's another one. Then there's 3 more. So the teaching of Vedanta, for you to see this oneness, it is vital that you see it through your mind, through your cognition, and once you see it through your mind, you reside, you stay with it. It doesn't change, even if you are in altered states. You wake up, you see it, you know it. You go to bed, you see it, you know it. You're angry, you see it, you know it. Maybe there might be momentary lapses, but you just know it. Because it's proven without a doubt. Vedanta establishes that through logical deduction, by establishing what is and what isn't. And then it comes to a conclusion to say, what is the universe? Who you are is one and the same thing. And when you go through this process, and you see it with your mind, you just know it. Just like the way we know the sun today is stationary and the earth rotates around the sun. Does it change our behavior? Kinda. We just say, don't look at it as, before we'd think that the moon is a god and, everything is one. We take it from that angle, but we also know that the earth rotates around the sun, and the sunrise and sunset is not real, but it's there. And we appreciate it, we enjoy it. We don't go around saying, hey, the sunrise and sunset doesn't exist, so I'm going to wake up when I want, and I'm going to do whatever I want, whenever I want, because that's an illusion. We take advantage of the fact that the sun rises. We take advantage of the light. We take advantage of the sunset. We take advantage of the lack of sun, which helps us sleep. And that's exactly how we use it. And understanding who you are, understanding that you're one with everything, actually resolves a lot of psychological issues. It resolves all kinds of issues. It also resolves all your desires, wants, and so on. Because you come to a place where you're so much at peace with that knowledge. You're so much at peace with who you are. Yes, you wake up in the morning, you need to feed your body because your body falls hungry. If it falls sick, you need to take care of it. If it does these things, you need to do that. But that's all from a transactional point of view, rather than saying this body is real, because this body is not who you are. The brilliance of this teaching, which resolves all our crises, it doesn't put them to an end like what I said yesterday, but it gives you a healthy perspective towards what is and what isn't, and who you are. These teachings were actually sacred in the olden times. Today we make it so available, and here we are in this camp talking about it. In the ancient times, you had to be initiated as a Brahmin at the age of 6. You had to have chanted the Vedas for 12 years. Then you spend another 12 years learning Paninian grammar, Sanskrit grammar. And by that time you still understand logic. So by 25 years later, you then sit with a teacher like me and say, now let's give meaning to what you have memorized for the last 25 years. It was sacred knowledge. It was not accessible, and that's why you don't hear it. You hear a lot about experiences, you hear a lot about all kinds of other stuff, but not this, because it was sacred knowledge. But my guru made it accessible to us. He simplified it. From 12, 25 years, he actually brought it down to 3 years. And from 3 years, some tried to make it. He also tried to do it in less than that. He said it doesn't work. So for me to study this, I had to go to India for about 3.5 years to go through the whole teaching. But we are here. There are 3 or 4 of us, and including Swami Priyananda and others teachers who come and talk about Vedanta. We talk about it because we've been trained to see it. So we make it accessible easily to people around the world. And the message we're trying to convey is, look, you're not this limited person. You are an amazing person. You're God. You're everything. You're everything that you want to be. You are an incredibly beautiful person. And you don't need all this other stuff. What you need to do is understand. Understand who you are. Know who you are. And when you know who you are, all those things fall away naturally. That is the vision of Vedanta. Briefly, I think. So, I think we can go more into the questions. I don't know how much time is left, but yeah.
So, for us to experience it, do we have to go to India for 3.5 years?
No. Now with the advent of Skype and Zoom and all that, all the modern technologies, I'm teaching online. We have this venue. The purpose of this is not truly just yoga, is to expose this teaching to all of you. That's why it's happening every year. That's why we come here to make this available, so that you don't have to go to India. There's a lot of teachers going around teaching Vedanta. It's important to see whether you have a connection with that teacher. And it doesn't mean that you get stuck with that teacher. You have to start somewhere. And if you have a connection with that teacher, that's how you start. Ram, who sets up this, you all know him. He teaches out here. There are another 2 or 3 teachers I know in England who are teaching it. But because we have Zoom and we have Skype and so on, there are ways of learning. But you have to start. The question is, are you prepared to make that commitment? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it requires learning, and it requires a commitment to make time to study it. So instead of 3.5 years, because we do it on Sundays, or because we do it on weekends, or we have camps like this, instead of 3.5 years, it becomes 10 or 12. But it still helps. I know people who have just shifted in a year of studying. There's actually, Ram has a group here in Reading, in Thatcham actually, and in Reading now, yeah. So where he teaches, he starts to teach about it, and that's a good start. But then there are other places around the world that people are starting. I'm going around the world, and as I mentioned yesterday, I'm homeless, but that's also intentional in the sense that I keep roaming around to bring an awareness to this teaching. That look, this is a way out. And I'm not saying this. It's not me who's saying this. It's not my teacher saying this. Yeah. It's the scriptures that actually reveal it. So the teaching requires us to go through the scriptures with a teacher to unfold it, because here's the problem. The reason why we do not see we are complete is because of an error, a mistaken identity. We all know if you hang out too much on Facebook, what happens? Someone steals your identity. And if you have had your identity stolen, you know what happens. It's horrible. It's a hell for years until you get it back. But we are committing the same mistake. We are making the fundamental, critical, horrible mistake of misidentifying who we are. And we don't know it. We think we're whatever your name is. You think you're this body, you're male, female, white, black, blonde, blue-eyed. That's a horrible mistake. And because of this mistake, you're suffering. It is this mistake that's causing you so much pain. You don't know it. You have stolen your own identity from you. That's the problem. And then you go off looking for experiences and thinking you're enlightened. You're just an enlightened fool because there's an error. How do you correct an error? You don't read a book to correct an error. You need someone to tell you, look, this is not the way to look at yourself. You need a mirror. And the Upanishads are the mirror to guide you, to hold your hand, to see who you truly are. And of course, you need the right teachers to guide through that, otherwise you still get confused. Because when teachers start telling you that this is a school of thought or that it is philosophy, then you know they don't know. This is a fundamental crux to understand. Now, when they box it into a philosophy or a school of thought, that they're telling you are a philosophy or that you are a school of thought. This sort of teaching happens because we don't understand it, and so we take whatever we heard and we parrot it off. That's the big difference between a teacher who knows and who doesn't. It's really, when you study this after 2 years, believe me, you can go out and teach. What do you teach? You're not your body, mind, sense, and so on. I mean, how hard is that to say it? I mean, I can tell you all that right now in the next 10 minutes. And you can go off telling everybody you know Vedanta because you all say you're not your body, mind, sense, complex. How do you prove it? You have to prove it through a means of knowledge. And the person who is a teacher that knows how to handle this information can help you handle that. Because what happens when you go through a book or you listen to YouTube or a recording, you're only vitiating and reinforcing the ignorance you already have. It doesn't help you take off the knowledge. You're just getting more information. But when you have a teacher, then the teacher says, hey, look at it differently. You raise a question. And that's why it's not a belief system, because you're trying to understand. And because you're trying to understand, you raise questions, you raise doubts. And because this is an opportunity for you to raise questions and raise doubts, that's why we have satsang. That's the meaning of satsang. It's not about, telling me what I want to know. And the teacher then says, by the way, look at it that way. Or look at it this way. So what happens is you start looking at it differently until you get stuck again. Then you come back and talk to the teacher again. And the teacher then takes you to the next step. It's an evolution process. And my guru used to use this analogy quite a great deal, is that, remember the old Polaroid photos of cameras? And most of the kids probably might not know. Beyond the age of selfies. The Polaroid would take 3 to 4 minutes for the image to appear. And because of that, you get to see who you are over time. When you hear people getting enlightened instantly, that's not true. Because the understanding of who you are is where is the enlightenment process. And it happens through your cognitive mind. The cognitive mind explains who you are because it tells you you're not your body, mind, sense complex. You have to see that with your mind's eye. Then you hear all these stories about people getting enlightened and so on and so on. People write books, and some of them even speak in the third person. I mean, that's just ego playing out. If you see that from your cognitive mind, you then react to the world differently. You see the world as nothing but you. Of course, when someone harms you, you have to protect this body. So you do what needs to be done. Arjuna had to do what needed to be done. And that's why that example is given. The worst case scenario in Bhagavad Gita. So the problem here is you. Because you have given yourself a different identity than your true self. And because you have created this problem, you are the only person that can solve it. You need to correct the identification or the mistaken identity that you are this person with a name, form, shape, color, and so on. When you can transcend that, your ignorance goes away. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of who you are. If you can see the truth of yourself, that is when you become enlightened. Now, does things change, or so you start elevating, you start like floating on air and doing magical tricks? No. You're the same person with a different attitude. And so your life changes, yes. But you're probably the only one that notice it. What others notice is that you are a much nicer person. And bearable, finally. Yeah, go ahead.
Whilst I'm working on myself and learning and understanding myself, how can I prepare, probably too late for my grandchildren, but how can we prepare our children, in my case grandchildren? I can't really teach them anything or help them because I'm only just learning, but there's a time element to it. How can I prepare?
That's an excellent question. So basically, you start with everything is one. And use the water example, for instance, that I used. Children, kids who are born after 1996, they already know it. They're already wired. If you tell them God is in heaven, they'll think you're speaking lies. But if you tell them we're all one, they say, yeah, I know that. Try it out.
That's reassuring.
Yes. The kids, especially who were born after 1996 and kids who were born after 2012, they all know it. They think we're idiots. Really.
So that's in the wiring, in the collective
Wiring, yes. Yeah. I'm just waiting for them to grow up. Then instead of 60 people in the room, I'll probably have... Yes. So I'm just waiting for them to grow up a little bit. Yes, right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Good. I'm sorry, I was going that way. Go ahead. I'll come back to you.
I have a naive question. I studied Vedanta many years ago.
Where?
In London.
With whom, may I
I
ask?
don't remember the name.
Okay.
I can find out. The point is that I never understood, perhaps the teacher was not so good, but I never understood really the meaning of oneness.
Right.
I know we have very limited time now, but let's forget about proofs. But just, what does it mean to you? Can you just
Okay.
explain?
It's actually easy to explain. Just the way you reduce all the water, I'll use two examples. My first analogy, and then I'll take you to the other explanation. The analogy is that of a water molecule, right? We look at ice, we look at vapor, we look at different water bodies. They're all different things. Tsunamis, a wave, right? They're all different forms of the same thing, right? When we use a critical examination through our mind, we see that all these things, a tsunami or a wave or a water molecule, a tea, coffee, and so on, is nothing but H2O, right? We come to that and we're rested in that. The same way, when we look at all the forms in the universe, they all boil down to the same vibration. It's the same thing in different forms. Like, for instance, we have the water molecule in the form of an ice cube. We have the water molecule in the form of a glacier. We have the water molecule in the form of snow, and so on. These are just solids. Then I can do the same thing with liquids, and I can do the same thing with vapor, and so on. So what we have, to put it in a simplistic way, which Einstein, by the way, has proven, that everything in the universe is nothing but E equals mc squared, right? The equation of relativity. From a scientific point of view, which Einstein has come up with, which is E equals mc squared, he said everything is energy, right? So when you boil everything to energy, the real question that Vedanta says, and there's no contradiction between Einstein and Vedanta, is what is that energy? So energy, according to Einstein, is transmuted and transformed into all of these different things that we see, which is proven by him. Okay? So I can skip that part, take a shortcut, and just focus on energy. That energy is what Vedanta defines very well, which Einstein did not. Okay? Everything is energy in different vibrations. So what we study in Vedanta is how those vibrations actually start. And you will see very specifically in Vedanta it says it starts with Om, which you all know. Whole deep science behind that. The entire universe is created from Om. What does the Bible say? There was a word. Ask them to explain what the word was, besides the textbook, because then you go into this endless loop. Who wrote it? Who created? Who, you know? In Vedas, we know exactly how it was formed. It breaks it down in a scientific way to say that from sound, air was formed. From air, fire was formed. And interestingly, fire is the first form, because air is formless. There's a whole science. I'm kind of giving you a flavor of it right now. From fire, water was formed. From water, earth. So when NASA is going around Mars and all the planets and exploring and wasting all these 20, 40 years of trying to discover water, the Vedas say there is water. What we're looking at in terms of Mars and the other planets, they're just solid earth, just the way we have our earth. The earth form. And there is water, there's air, and there's fire in all objects around the world, in consciousness, just like our bodies. Our bodies is 75% of water. There's fire in our digestive system, there's heat in our bodies. That's exactly all the objects that is tangible, has all the elements. This is a profound science that modern science hasn't got to. Okay, so the bottom line is we're all of the same vibration, manifesting ourselves in different forms, like the water body example, for a purpose. And that purpose is to be fulfilled in each lifetime. The purpose is based on our past life karmas. And that's how the cycle goes on. When did you get out of the cycle? When you gain the understanding that you are not your body, mind, sense complex. When you come to Vedanta, and this is the question she raised yesterday, which was, what's your name? Sorry. Kaylee raised yesterday was, what happens when you become a Jivan Mukta, when you become realized? This is the terms used in the Sanskrit language, but what is the realization we're talking about? Not an experience. When you listen to a lot of Vedanta teachers or Neo-Vedantins, they'll tell you become realized, you sit in the Sukhasana and then you become realized. No. The only thing that you find in your meditation is you're the same old idiot that you were before the meditation, and you come out of that meditation and you have the same problems. Doesn't change who you are. Okay, you had a great experience, great. Now you want to brag about it to feel special, go ahead, do that. But it doesn't change who you are. Vedanta teaches you how to cognitively see that you and everybody else is enlightened. The difference is you know it, they don't. That's all. What you're seeing is forms of the same beautiful thing that you are. and you establish, you totally know it. It's not a question left for debate or experience, for that matter. When you hear teachers talking about experience, or they talk about whether this is a philosophy or a school of thought, yeah, well, they need some more learning to do. And I'm saying that not to demean other things. I'm giving you a pointer so that you understand, you have the discernment of knowing how to go about listening to different teachers that come out teaching this stuff. Because the Shastra teaches you without a doubt, you are the person that needs to know who you are. You do not. The only reason I can teach it today is because my teacher taught me that. And because my teacher Tia taught me that, I can feel it. I can experience it as everything is one. I can say it in that sense as a byproduct, not as the only factor. So in this case, I use the experience of, let's say in the olden days, we used to have discrimination against black people. And we would think that black people are inferior people, or that they are subhumans. But what has happened? Did the blacks change the skin color for us to feel that they are normal and human beings like us? Or a brown person, for instance? Did the whites change their skin color to feel inferior and feel equal with other people around the world? No. The only difference that took place there was the cognitive shift. And here the cognitive shift is a correction. Please know that. The location of the mistake is within your body, mind, sense complex, and because you have made a mistaken identity of who you are, that needs to be corrected. What you're seeking is a correction, not an enlightenment experience. When you see who you are, once you make that correction, then you are enlightened because you know who you are. That's fundamental. These key points that I'm raising here today are the value systems that if you take with you, you'll be in good shape. You'll understand and you'll listen with discernment rather than just believing stuff from the various teachers that you hear about. So what are those key points? One, you are making a fundamental mistake of who you think you are. Two, you need a cognitive mind to understand that you are not this body, mind, sense complex. And that is a correction, not that you are becoming something else. Understand that. It's a correction. You already are. It's just that you made a mistake of who you think you are. And that needs to be corrected. That's it. Well, sorta. 10 minutes, yeah. You had a question back here? Yeah, go ahead.
So you speak about this error. So how did it appear in the first place? I don't know, maybe in the first people, because if we are from then kind of reincarnating because of the karmas, but how did it come about in the first place?
I blame IT guys.
You what?
I blame IT guys.
IT guys, right? Yeah, they just got deeper, didn't they? I mean, ex-IT person anyway. So, there's a beautiful statement actually that Swamiji mentioned yesterday in that verse in Taittiriya. But I won't go deep into it. I'll give you a simple explanation. When you're really content and you're hanging out, you know, you got your love is nearby, you know, you have proper food, the weather's beautiful, you know, the roses out there, you know, you can smell the roses and the lavenders, and there's beautiful background music, and you're just sitting around, and you know, you're feeling really good about yourself. And what happens is that you feel a sense of inspiration. Oh, maybe I should just paint. You know, there's something very creative that starts. When you're in a happy state, you're not solving problems. But there's an element of being bored, but because you're so happy, you want to do something good. You know, you want to play, right? When you're a kid, you played with your friends, but as an adult, how do you play? Because everybody has a job and you're the only one who's feeling good at this moment. So, so you say, okay, well, I want to play, and what do? You have an inspiration. You have a creative inspiration. And what do? You go paint, you go do something creative with your hands or your mind. You write a poem, or you sculpt something, or you sew something, or there's this thing that comes up. It like comes out after you, and you go do it. That moment of inspiration, that moment of creation, is how the universe got created. Because when you are complete and you feel great, you feel in love with everything, you want to enjoy it. So, to use a dualistic term, which is God, we can say God was feeling inspirational and just created the thing, the universe. But when you create something, you're creating something that is out of you, right? Because it comes from you. Where did the poem come from? Where did the inspiration to paint come from? Out of you. Now you use external materials to manifest your creation. But the spider, the scriptures talk about an example. How does the spider create a web? Where does it get the material from? To weave the web that it creates. From inside it. Creates a web, and when it wants to take it away, it just sucks it back in again. So that's exactly how the universe came into creation. Now the problem is, when you create something like that, you create something that is out of you, made of you, and because of that, this ignorance process began. And it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. We can explain that more, but that's a very deep question to explain in a couple of classes. But I'm using a very simplistic answer, which is actually shown. The spider example is given in the scriptures to explain how the creation came into being and how we came here. The problem is when we came into existence, we're creating karma from our actions, and that starts another whole endless cycle unless we break out of it. So yeah, short answer actually.
So the Vedas were revealed and they were entrusted to four families to...
No, they were not entrusted to four families. They came out at different times with different families. The Vedas were a compilation. They were not written by one person. So if you look at the Vedas, different sections were written by different rishis. And these are the sages that received the information, and what they did is they compiled them during that time. So that's why it was over a 15,000-year process. So different families compiled different sections of it. Then later on, more around like 5,000-6,000 years ago, particularly a family called Brigu, the Brigu family, they compiled like a lot, but they had a lot that they were able to collect over time. So it's like you collect a bunch of information, then you collect, and then we have a convention, and then we share, then we compile a book. So different Vedas were compiled at different places in different times, and that's why we have four Vedas. It doesn't mean that they're any different. They all say exactly the same thing.
How were they revealed?
Through channeling. These sages were able to perceive the information. And the information was channeled through them, and they were told this information through their meditation. And they were able to coin specific calculations and names and terms because of the sophistication of the Sanskrit language, which I talked about yesterday. The reason why other cultures did not do that is because of the sophistication of the limitation of their languages. It's not that they did not receive it. Because if you study the Aborigines or the Mayans or the Incas and the Hopis, and if you go to even the Ramesses period, a lot of these cultures, ancient cultures, they speak the same language. For instance, the shamans in Brazil, they actually have the same language. But the terminologies are different because the human language is so limiting It cannot express worldly concepts like karma, dharma, those things that we express in Sanskrit. But Sanskrit can, because these guys were able to create words so that the person can hear it. Were you here yesterday? I talked about the beauty and the elegance of the Sanskrit language, and it is because of the Sanskrit language that this information was preserved. And that's how the knowledge got transferred. Now, does it mean that the Indians only had it? No. I traveled in many different cultures, and I actually studied ancient cultures, and I realized that they all had this information, just differently, and it wasn't preserved. The reason why we have it today is because of the memorization processes, the teaching methodology in the Indian tradition, which was through a person memorizing it and then transferring it to another person. That's why it took 12 years of memorization before you can go talk about it. And that's how it carried on. So the Indians have a really elegant way of preserving it through this lineage. So I'm one of the lineages that takes it forward. And we then pass it on to the next generation, and so on and so on. And that's why we have the benefit of getting it today. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask if it is possible that this knowledge was passed from the previous cycle of our civilization before the big crash.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is it, there's a theory that thousands of years ago we had a bigger civilization already established on the planet, and that there may be, actually this may be knowledge from what happened before.
Yeah, in the Vedas we said that there's Satya Yuga, which was a really advanced civilization, and I was reading some reports recently. They said there was a really sophisticated civilization 20,000 years ago, and we're just in dark ages, so we're just thinking that we are the only ones that are smart. But but the fact is, there was a lot of this knowledge in Satya Yuga and all those other different times, and we're just in the dark ages, and now it's just beginning to emerge.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, yeah, please, yeah.
So this is the answer to the lady.
Right.
How can you prepare the
Right,
preparation?
yeah.
So you said that those who were born, say after 1996, and if you tell them that God is up in the heaven, they will say it's all fake. So I was listening to a YouTube sermon by Sadhguru at the Isha Foundation. So he says all of us know that on this earth is a part of this planet.
Yeah.
And then that's part of a galaxy, which is, there are multiple galaxies. So what is up and what is down? There's no concept. So if we don't know where is up, how can we tell about who lives there?
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, it was very good. Yeah, but actually, I usually go a little deeper about how you tell your kids, which is, thank you for bringing that up, is basically just telling them the truth and they know it. Tell them that we are all one in different forms, and you'll be amazed. I've done this. When kids, they ask questions, just be honest. But if you go into this heaven-hell business, they'll probably run away. Yeah.
I will say another good is, have you seen the corn flour, like slime stuff that goes really hard and bash it up really runny? If you put it in a speaker, there's a video of it in a speaker where sound, you can feel the vibration. Turn it into little people. It's like they're all trying to move out of this.
Right, yeah.
It's like the perfect example of vibration making
Right.
matter.
Wow,
That's a beautiful expression, yeah. Right.
just one more question.
Good.
So who first spoke Sanskrit?
There isn't, because it's an oral tradition, and historicity in the ancient cultures was not something that was valuable. The whole business of documenting was really an emergence of Western civilization, more so in the 1400s, with the advent of paper and pen, and so that's when this whole culture came about. But before that, it wasn't. Yeah, good.
So yesterday,
oneness of the universe and
Right.
tiny particles and evaporation. So, does the Vedas talk about when everyone has reached that level of what?
Yeah, it doesn't say that when everyone collectively reaches there, because then the existent, this what we know, the tangible existent, would cease to exist. But it is a cycle.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the total quantity of water on Earth? And if all the water and all the lakes and in the skies and the clouds and everything drained into, and the glaciers drained into the ocean, what will we have? Yeah. Yeah, there might be a day that might happen, but there's beauty in the universe with the cycles. There's beauty in everything that we see, that we experience. And why stop that? If we say God, if I use that term loosely, decides, well, I'm getting bored of this and I'll create something else, okay, then he stops and, or maybe he says, I want to rest. And by the way, we have those dates and calendars in the Vedas say that Brahmaji, we call him like a human form, that God the creator or Brahma the creator actually decides to take a rest. And he does take a rest and then starts over again. We need that, right? How long can you be creating if you are painting something? You need to go to bed at some point. It's an alive being. That's the point we're missing. It's an alive energy, just our feelings like love, intellect, thinking, all this. This is why we feel that way, because we're alive. And God or this universe has exactly the same feelings that we feel, minus the psychological problems. So if you negate the psychological problems, then, so why are we so drawn to love? Because when you truly love someone without the limitations and expectations, is because we're resonating with that vibration of the God's energy. Yeah. Or when we feel creative, or when you just laughed for a minute here, where were you when you were laughing? Did you at the point when you were laughing, did you say, I'm so and so with my problems? No. The very second that you are laughing, at that instant, you are God, an expression of God. And not in the Western sense of understanding God. We have a better term for that, which I haven't introduced, which is called Ishvara. So in the moment of laughter, you are that Ishvara. Ishvara is a better term, because when you say God, that means up in the heaven with a long beard. I'm trying to be God, with my long beard. I'm waiting for a few more years before it gets whiter. But my guru used to joke about it. He says, the difference between one guru and the other is how long his beard is. So, but at the moment of laughter, if you notice, your pain, your limitation as a human being has all disappeared. When you're in love, that is an expression of Ishwar, of God. And that's why we're craving it so much. But if we know that we are that, then we don't seek it outside us. The reason why we say Ananda in the end is because we feel the limitlessness of who we are. When you are laughing, do you feel limited? No. You do not have to be in an altered state. You do not have to meditate in the caves or sit under a tree, for that matter. When you're laughing, that's a few seconds of an expression of God through you. Love is exactly that. It's an expression. Not the love that we expect from someone else and that's demanding, but of giving, of being. Yeah. So learning to love is a way. Learning to love without any expectation is a way. That leads you to karma yoga. That's one of the ways, actually. I mean, that's a whole different subject, which I did last year, but yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So when everything resolves at the point where it stops, ready to start again, when it starts again, is
Right.
Do we start again with our ignorance after?
Well, it's not you who starts it because you no longer exist. So it's like this. I take a drop of water. I have a drop here, right? And we can call this drop Svatmananda. I'm a Swami, it's orange, right? You can see orange. Actually, this is an example in the Upanishads. You're clear water, right? That's the real color. Then, because of something else, I take to be orange. And so I've made the mistake of looking at myself as this orange being. Because what do you see? You see an orange. Do you see colorless water? No. You see an orange being because of the form. Because of the outer form, you see the orange. But then when you recognize and say, oh my God, I'm not orange, thank God. It's one step closer. Then we make a mistake of adopting another color because now we feel that we're enlightened, so we go there. That's a mistake. But then you say, no, I'm just pure H2O that's clear and tasty. Has no taste, but that's the beauty of it. And you then take this amount of water or body that's contained in this form, because water is formless, and you take this water and you pour it into the ocean. Do you think it has its own identity anymore? The problem is we do not know what is water. What we know is that this container is who we are. We make the mistake of the cup, not the water. Vedanta teaches you to see what the water is, not the cup. You have to transcend the body of the cup to see the water. And when you know the water and the water reaches the ocean, you don't exist. Now, does the water evaporate? Does the same water evaporate? No, because it's, part of the ocean. Does the ocean evaporate? Yes, because it starts a whole another different cycle. And this water that is evaporated actually gets carried by the clouds to the Himalayas or to the Alps. It hangs around there as a glacier for thousands of years until there's a heat wave like next week. And then it starts melting down. It's like, ooh, I got released from this form of a glacier. Maybe I can start rolling down until somebody swallows it in somebody's body and it gets trapped in somebody's body. Turns into urine and then it goes down the drain there, Then it goes through another purification. So all these cycles we go through thousands of lifetimes, and then eventually when you have enough punya, you meet the right teacher, and the teacher says, look, dude, you're not this idiot. You're a God. See that. Because telling you is not going to help you. It's not a belief system. You have to know it. And I'll show you how you can know it. The Upanishads is the one. You see, the reason this teaching works with the Upanishads will say that in order to know this, you need three things. You need a qualified mind, which is what the whole thing I was talking about yesterday. If you have a qualified mind, that means you are the qualified student. You have a prepared mind. That's the first prerequisite. Secondly, you need the teaching, the scriptures, because the scriptures becomes the guide. Vedanta becomes the guide to help you transact between the teacher and the student. Why do we need currencies? We can trade without currencies. But currency, the pound here, is essential for transactional. But how do we know the teacher is telling the truth or teacher is teaching the right thing so that you can see it? If we didn't have the scriptures, if we didn't have Vedanta, then the teacher can tell you all kinds of crap. And you swallow them. And my guru used to say, well, you swallow pumpkins. I mean, it's not humanly possible to, but it's unbelievable the stuff we believe. It's like swallowing pumpkins. The fact that God is in heaven is a pumpkin we swallow. Yeah. Yeah. And so when the teacher teaches without the scriptures, you are being told to swallow pumpkins. It doesn't matter even if it's a Vedanta teacher. And the student has to be able to hear that, because the prerequisites, just like we go through a PhD program, you need a prepared mind. So if you have a prepared mind, if you have Vedantic scriptures, and if you have a teacher who's trained in the traditional way of teaching, there is a likelihood of you seeing or you gaining the vision of Vedanta. When one of these three is missing, forget it. There's always another life, by the way. Come back the next time. Yes.
So from one side there is a circle, a cycle, sorry, and from the other there is that teaching to help others to understand that reality. But we know that once we go to that oneness, there could be initiation of the cycle. This one or a different one. So
Yeah.
why the teaching? Just for the enjoyment of the cycle, or I mean, what is? I don't know if.
Okay, so the value is, I kind of facetiously said there's always another lifetime, but really, if you really, well, you might be, the weather's really nice today, so maybe we're happier today, and, we're in this wonderful camp and festival and we're feeling a little good, and we're feeling better about ourselves. But then when we suffer and when we go through illnesses and when we get rejected by our significant others, we feel pain. And the worst pain we usually feel is when we have kids teaching us. So the pain of human existence is horrible, if we really see it. In this lifetime, we might be lucky. We're not so lucky if we're born in Somalia or Syria. And how do we know that the next lifetime we might be born there? Right? We don't know that. So what this does is that this ends the cycle of birth and death through this teaching, because what the Vedas say, and there's no way to prove this, we have to take it we have to accept it by extension, that if you understand who you are, first of all, you get benefits right here and right now, but at the end, you cease to exist. That means you don't exist ever again. You as this identity, as the soul. Now, as somebody had just asked, will that water molecule rise up? Will this same water molecule that merged in the ocean rise up? It ceased to exist. Will the water molecules from the ocean rise? Yes. But you don't exist, so what's the point? It's not you anymore. Yeah, the cycle continues. It's an endless cycle until Brahma says, okay, I need a rest. And we have those calculations. He does rest. And the cycle and this whole what do you call it, creation ceases to exist. It resolves back into nothingness. Then it starts again. But that's millions and billions of years ago, later. And we also didn't exist a few millions ago. We see stars dying. So all of these comes and goes and comes and goes and makes no difference. The thing is, right here, what concerns you is your journey of your soul. Do you want to come back and go through all the pain? And so it becomes the greatest gift and the greatest achievement, the greatest purpose in life, to seek this teaching as soon as possible. And that's why the Indian culture revolves around this. The reasons we teachers are worshipped, because we liberate you from the bondage of rebirth. But the problem is we take this worship and we transfer it to every guru who teaches you how to bake a cake. The teacher that teaches you how to bake a cake, or the teacher that teaches you how to turn yourself into a pretzel, has value, but it does not liberate you from your mistaken identity of who you are. But the teacher that teaches you and corrects your identity is the one that releases you from the bondage of future lives and deaths. It is like you were born in a prison, you grew up in a prison, you got married in a prison, you have children in prison, and years later, you're about 80 years old, you're still in prison, you do not know anything outside those walls, and somebody just says, hey, all your crimes of many lifetimes are released. I release you. Somebody comes and pays off the fines, the $1 billion fines that you had to pay, and tells you you can walk out of the door anytime. You can go see the world. Be free. And you walk out of that door, you're free. What would you not do to this person who has just released you from a prison of 80 years old? You'd worship him. Hey, if somebody gives you a car, you're going to be worshiping that person, which is only 10,000 pounds or less. I mean, somebody gives you a Christmas gift, I mean, if it's really expensive, you know, you'll worship that person. But what about if somebody releases you from this chain, bondage? What would you not do? I felt that way with my teacher. I was like, I didn't want to do anything else. He did not encourage us to worship him, in fact, but I just felt it, you know, it just came from me. In fact, I was so arrogant that I would not even touch my parents' feet and all that. And it has nothing to do with that. But I just wanted to make his life a tad bit better. Make it just a little bit more comfortable than he was at this moment. Whatever little. Maybe he was comfortable by bringing him a cup of coffee. I just did that. It was a pleasure. I did not see servitude in that. I saw gratitude in my servitude towards him. I stayed up all night, you know, massaging his legs because he had diabetes. You know, that was an honor. Because we feel that from the inside. He's liberated me, and I feel that. And what can I do more? Me spending one night massaging his feet was nothing compared to the lifetimes that, you know, I've avoided. So it comes naturally. But what we have done is we have taken this whole drama behind gurus and placed it on any other guru that teaches us how to bake biscuits, you know. And we think that's a great skill. No, you're entrenched more and more into this samsara, into this world. But to release from it is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Why? Because you know who you are, finally. Try it out. You'll love it. Okay. With that, I'll bring it to a closure. And hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you next time. And the way to reach me, you can look at the brochures. And I can spell it out to you if you want, but it's svatmananda@gmail.com. Email is the best way to reach me. If you have any questions, I'm not sure I'm going to be around too much, but since we're coming to a closure. But if you look at the brochure, get my last name, and just add @gmail.com. I'll spell it out. It's SVATMANANDA @gmail.com. You can also reach me on WhatsApp, which is a US number, +1 424 244 6306. I'll repeat. It's +1 424 424 244 6306. I'm sorry?
Does your phone ever stop ringing?
You know, I travel so much, so it never rings. I have it on mute, so it's okay. But I do respond to the messages in time. Well, thank you so much for your attention, and I hope to see you around maybe next year, maybe not, but you can reach me. And if you have any more questions on this, and if you need some guidance on how to go about doing that, do send me an email. I do respond. It takes me a couple of days because I travel quite a bit, but I do get to respond to every email that comes across. And just let me know that you came to my talk, and I'll give you special attention. Because I've done so much work with these lectures, so it's easy to add on than talking to someone who's brand new and start all over again. And I know some of you have been coming to my lectures the last few years, so it's a lot easier to do this, right? And thank you so much, and see you next time. Take care.